A student, one we were sponsoring from a disadvantaged background, became fixated on expressing her gratitude. "It's really not necessary," I told her. "Our family supports hundreds of students every year." She insisted she was different from those ungrateful types. She offered to reserve seats for me, fetch lunch, take notes. It went on until the day I gave the lunch she prepared to someone else. She snatched the lunchbox back, hurling it into the trash. "You look down on me. You think I'm too low-class to be seen with. Just say it. You can beg me later, and I still wouldn't do anything for you." Watching her storm away, a strange impulse surged through me, a desire to grab her, and then maybe, just maybe, to knock some sense into her. I was playing basketball with a few friends when a petite girl hesitantly approached, interrupting our game. "Excuse me," she began, her voice a little shaky. "Is Ethan Ainsworth here?" My friends immediately started teasing. "Ooh, looks like someone's got a secret admirer." The girl was small, bundled up in a hat and mask, leaving only bright, earnest eyes visible. No, it's not like that," she stammered. "I'm here to repay his kindness. His family is sponsoring my university education." She seemed nervous, her words tumbling over each other. "Are you Ethan Ainsworth?" she asked, stepping past the others and coming directly to me, her eyes filled with a mixture of hope and shyness. "No, he is," I said, shaking my head and gesturing to my roommate beside me. My roommate, Daniel, gave me a surprised look but remained silent. A flicker of awkwardness crossed the girl's face before she turned to Daniel, her gratitude overflowing. I'm Clara Song," she introduced herself. "Thank you so much for your family's support. I wouldn't be here without it." They exchanged WeChat contacts and even made plans for dinner that evening. Once they were gone, my friends turned to me, curious. "Ethan, why did you tell her you weren't you?" "Trouble," I simply replied. At the start of the semester, as a second-year representative, I'd given a speech to the new students. Even if she hadn't recognized me then, I'd also visited all the freshman classes to promote the student union. To claim she wanted to repay a debt but didn't even know what her benefactor looked like. Impossible. This whole act felt clumsy, amateurish, and frankly, annoying. The next day at noon, she stopped me again, her eyes brimming with accusation and indignation. "Ethan Ainsworth, why did you lie to me?" "Oh, and what did I lie about?" I asked, a flicker of irritation rising within me, but my upbringing compelled me to be patient. You are him. Why did you say it was someone else?" She still wore that ridiculous mask, hiding most of her face, but I could see her eyes were red-rimmed, betraying her embarrassment. I sighed inwardly. Just a kid, I thought. Why am I even bothering to argue? "You don't need to repay anything," I said, trying to sound as dismissive as possible. "Our family supports hundreds of students every year. You don't need to single us out for special treatment. Just focus on your studies and, in the future, contribute positively to society." The hallway was bustling with students leaving class for lunch. I'm not comfortable with crowds, so I wanted to end the conversation quickly. But she blocked my path. "Wait, Ethan Ainsworth," she insisted. "I'm different from those who are ungrateful. I understand gratitude." "Grateful?" I thought, a little bewildered. "If you want to express thanks, fine. But why this odd way of putting it, as if anyone who doesn't repay us is a white-eyed wolf? And why make it sound like our family sponsors students expecting repayment? Really, it's unnecessary. Just focus on your studies," I repeated firmly, turning to leave. I assumed that would be the end of it. But the very next afternoon, she found me in my lecture hall. Seeing me enter, she waved eagerly. "Here, I saved you a seat." Under the curious and amused stares of my classmates, I deliberately sat somewhere else. I ignored her hurt look and focused on the lecture. As soon as class ended, she rushed over, blocking my way again. "Ethan Ainsworth, why didn't you sit in the seat I saved for you?" I pulled her into an empty classroom, desperate to escape the public spectacle. "Do you even have classes to attend?" I asked, my patience wearing thin. Her persistence was starting to feel like a personal affront, and a ridiculous thought flickered through my mind. Should I tell my family to stop the sponsorship? I skipped my class to save you that seat, she said, her voice small and wounded, looking down at her shoes. Clara Song, I said, trying to keep my voice level. You really don't need to repay me. Please, just stop bothering me. This felt like emotional blackmail, and it was grating on my nerves. These little manipulative tactics might work on some people, but they only made me more annoyed. I really am grateful, she insisted, her voice trembling slightly. I know this money might not be a lot to you, but it saved me. It pulled me out of a really dark place. My parents died when I was young, she continued, her voice cracking. I was raised by my grandmother. I barely managed to get into university, and then I had no money. My uncle was even trying to sell me off for a bride price. Her eyes welled up with tears as she spoke, and I couldn't deny the sincerity in her gaze. Grandma said you were my benefactor, she whispered, that I had to repay you. Seeing her like this, I felt a pang of guilt for my earlier suspicions. It's all right, I said, softening my tone. You don't need to repay me. Just take care of your grandmother, focus on your studies, and that's enough. But Clara remained insistent on repaying me. She would save up money and wait in line for 3 hours to buy pastries from my favorite bakery, oblivious to the fact that my family owned the place and I could have them anytime I wanted. When I was sick and missed classes, she diligently compiled notes for me, but I had private tutors and had already covered all that material. Besides, I was still studying at home and was consistently top of our year, while she was, well, somewhere in the middle to lower ranks, and not even in the same year as me. Her notes were largely irrelevant and often inaccurate. Our family gave each sponsored student a stipend of 1,000 yuan on their meal card every year, but she stubbornly refused to use it, saying she would pay me back. She'd somehow gotten my WeChat and would meticulously transfer the exact cost of every meal she ate in the cafeteria back to me. When I played basketball, she'd show up, bundled in layers of thick clothing, clutching a lukewarm bottle of mineral water to her chest, trying to keep it warm for me. As I came off the court, sweating, she'd approach with a bright, eager smile. Ethan, you've been sweating a lot. Have some water. She'd pull out the still lukewarm bottle, beads of sweat trickling down her hands and onto the bottle, eventually dripping onto the ground. I shook my head. You drink it. I have my own water. I gestured towards my insulated water bottle sitting nearby. She was still wearing that mask, even in this weather. It was damp and clinging to her face, likely soaked with sweat. She probably needed the water more than I did. And, if she wanted to keep the water warm, wouldn't it be more effective to wrap the bottle in clothing, rather than wearing all those layers herself? At that moment, a sinking feeling washed over me. Was our family's money just being wasted? I wondered. With this level of, well, let's just say ingenuity, what could she possibly achieve? She probably couldn't even roast sweet potatoes without burning them. I didn't understand her actions, but Daniel, my roommate, seemed quite moved by her efforts. Hearing my refusal, Clara's eyes welled up with tears again, her face crumpling with disappointment. Clara, give me the water, Daniel said, taking the bottle from her. He shot me a disapproving look. Some privileged people might not appreciate cheap water like this. Clara looked at him with gratitude. His words stung. Just to be contrary, I retorted, oh, well, I'm sure it's perfect for you then. After that basketball court incident, Daniel, ever the storyteller, embellished the whole thing, spreading rumors around campus. Suddenly, I was the spoiled rich kid who turned his nose up at a poor girl's kind gesture because the water wasn't expensive enough. I was the heartless bully, taking advantage of a vulnerable girl, lacking basic decency. Daniel, are you out of your mind? I exploded as soon as I got back to our dorm room, landing a punch on his arm. He tried to retaliate, but I pinned his arms down before he could react. Ethan Ainsworth, what the hell is wrong with you? What did I even say? He sputtered, his face reddening. Did I even mention what you said? Looks like someone's guilty conscience is showing, I sneered. His eyes flickered with guilt and resentment. I released him with a cold laugh. Next time, a punch won't be the end of it. After that, I cut off all contact with Daniel. We were never really close friends anyway. Our families had business connections, and we were roommates by chance. Clara, however, seemed to gravitate towards him. I saw them together around campus quite often, chatting and laughing. But every time Clara spotted me, she'd become flustered, rushing over to explain that she and Daniel had just bumped into each other. Each time, Daniel would glare at me from behind her, a dark cloud hanging over his face. "It's none of my business," I'd say, shaking off her hand. I'd be thrilled if she and Daniel did get together, and she'd finally leave me alone. My birthday arrived, and I rented out a whole floor of a restaurant, inviting all my close friends. Daniel and Clara were definitely not on the list, but somehow they showed up anyway. "Happy birthday, Ethan," Clara chirped, presenting a gift with a forced smile. My friends, seeing them, collectively groaned and started making ooh la la sounds, creating an awkward atmosphere. But Clara seemed oblivious, still beaming as she offered the gift. "I saved up for half a year to get you this wallet," she announced proudly. One of my friends burst out laughing. "Bit outdated, isn't it? Who even uses cash and cards anymore?" He was always blunt, but not malicious, just tactless. "And that model's discontinued at the boutique, sweetheart. You sure you didn't get a fake?" Clara's face flushed crimson, mortification washing over her. I bought a real one. From the official store. I have the receipt." I shot my friend a warning glance. It was still a kind gesture, however misguided. But seriously, was she insane? Saving up for half a year on her budget to buy me a wallet? Frankly, I was far from touched. Looking at the LV logo on the bag, I figured she could probably return it. "You should return it," I suggested gently. "I really don't need it. It must have been quite expensive for you." Before I could finish, she cut me off, her voice rising. "Ethan, I really didn't buy a fake. I worked part-time for half a year to buy this. You can't insult me like that." She bristled like a cornered hedgehog, staring at me with stubborn defiance, desperately trying to convince me. "I'm not insulting you," I protested, completely bewildered. "I just meant it's expensive for you, and I don't need it. You should just get your money back." Just then, Daniel stepped forward, playing the hero. "Ethan Ainsworth, you are unbelievable. Clara gives you a gift, and you insult her. Like this? You don't deserve her kindness." Without waiting for a response, he grabbed Clara's arm and stormed off, dragging her away. "What the hell is wrong with those two?" I muttered, shaking my head in disbelief. The next day, Clara acted as if nothing had happened, popping up in front of me with a lunchbox, all smiles and forced cheerfulness. "Ethan, I brought you lunch." Daniel lurked behind her, his expression as dark as a thundercloud. I was starting to admire her sheer audacity. Ignoring her outstretched hand, I simply stared blankly ahead. Seeing my lack of reaction, she launched into another awkward explanation. I misunderstood you last night. You were being kind. Grandma scolded me for being rude last night. Please forgive me." Daniel continued to glare daggers at me. I couldn't resist a sarcastic jab. "Why don't you give it to Daniel? He looks like he's about to eat someone." Instantly, Clara turned to Daniel, catching the barely concealed malice in his eyes. She faltered, a flicker of understanding dawning. In her expression, ignoring him, she quickly turned back to me, frantic to explain. "You've got it all wrong, Ethan. Daniel and we're not together." I took a step back, distancing myself from her outstretched hand. None of my business. I started walking towards the building entrance, and she trailed after me. "Wait, Ethan, please take this." Clara song. I finally snapped, turning to face her, my patience completely exhausted. "I've told you countless times, I don't need your repayment." Clara's eyes welled up, her brow furrowing in distress. This is made by my grandmother. She wanted to thank you personally." Seeing her like that, I took a deep breath, my resolve crumbling. I reluctantly took the lunchbox. Just don't make it a habit. Damn my soft heart. Anyone else, I could have brushed off. But she always brought up her grandmother. It reminded me too much of my own grandmother who had raised me, and whom I hadn't been there for in her final moments. After that, she found every excuse to bring me lunch. "Grandma wants to thank you. Grandma made this especially for you." She knew that mentioning her grandmother was my weakness, the one thing that would make me relent. But this charade had to stop. The next time she appeared, claiming her grandmother had personally made dumplings for me, I decided to confront her directly. "Clara Song," I asked, point blank, "are you trying to pursue me romantically?" I couldn't see her face behind the mask, but I could guess she was blushing furiously. She looked at me, eyes wide with a mixture of shyness and something else. I just want to repay your kindness," she stammered, "your misunderstanding." But seeing her reaction, a coldness settled in my heart. I was angry at myself for letting my sentimentality cloud my judgment. "Clara Song, stop showing up in front of me," I said, my voice firm and cold. "It's making me very uncomfortable. And I've told you, I don't need your repayment." Panic flickered in her eyes. "Is it something I did wrong? Did I upset you, Ethan? Tell me, and I'll fix it, please. I have someone I like already." I lied. "Your actions are going to make her misunderstand." "Misunderstand? How could she?" she exclaimed, her voice rising in pitch. Realizing she'd been too loud, she quickly lowered her voice, adding, "I'm just trying to express my gratitude. She shouldn't misunderstand that." "Shouldn't misunderstand?" I scoffed, looking at her incredulously. "The entire campus is buzzing with rumors that I'm being pursued by a poor student, and you think she shouldn't misunderstand?" "Those who are pure will remain pure in heart," she declared, striking a self-righteous pose. "I have a clear conscience." Her sheer audacity made me laugh, a bitter, humorless sound. "Pure bullshit," I snapped, losing my temper. "Just leave me alone, will you?" "How can you talk to me like that?" she asked, her voice laced with hurt, as if genuinely shocked by my outburst. Before I could respond, Daniel materialized from thin air, glaring at me. "Ethan Ainsworth, why are you bullying Clara?" Daniel pulled her behind him, striking a protective stance. I almost choked on my own disbelief. These two are truly unbelievable, I thought. "Fine," I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "So, you have to give me this lunch, right?" I gestured towards Clara's lunchbox. "Daniel, here you go. From now on, all her lunches are for you." Hearing this, Clara stared at me, her expression shifting from confusion to icy anger. She snatched the lunchbox and, in a swift, dramatic motion, hurled it into the nearest trash can. "You look down on me. You think I'm beneath you, too low class for your precious world? You could have just said so. You can beg me later, but I wouldn't lift a finger for you again." With that, Clara grabbed Daniel's arm and stormed off, leaving me standing there, watching her retreating back. A powerful urge surged through me to chase after her, and then, maybe, just maybe, deliver a well-deserved double slap. After that day, she never bothered me again. And, despite my annoyance, I didn't tell my family to cut off her sponsorship, because, beyond her bizarre fixation with me, everything else she'd said was true. Her family was genuinely poor. If we withdrew our support, she'd likely end up exactly as she described, married off young and her potential wasted. Logging off from my online class, I returned to my dorm building to find a large crowd gathered outside, buzzing with excitement. "Wow, she's gorgeous. We have someone this beautiful at our university? Seriously stunning. A goddess." The crowd was blocking the entrance to our dorm. Reluctantly, I pushed my way through. I found myself face to face with the goddess everyone was raving about. She looked vaguely familiar. Then, she glared at me, and recognition sparked in my mind. Just then, Daniel emerged from the dorm building. His jaw dropped as he saw her. "Clara, you're here. Sorry to keep you waiting." "Clara?" It was Clara Song. No wonder she looked familiar. As they walked past me, Daniel, puffed up with pride, couldn't resist a smug remark. "Ethan Ainsworth, lucky for me you're so blind. Otherwise, I wouldn't have landed such a beautiful girlfriend." His face beamed with self-satisfaction. Clara, equally smug, added her own parting shot, striking a dramatic pose. Ethan Ainsworth, even if you beg me now, I wouldn't turn back. Serves you right for trampling on my sincere heart. She seemed to think she was living in some melodramatic romance novel, expecting me to suddenly realize my mistake and be consumed by regret now that I'd seen her true beauty. I couldn't help but laugh. You two are seriously delusional. I called after them. But yeah, you're perfect for each other. Then, I turned and walked into the dorm, leaving them to their self-congratulatory fantasy. It's anyone's guess where Clara got the audacity, thinking I'd regret everything just by seeing her face. She and Daniel started parading around in front of me daily, as if waiting for my moment of agonizing remorse. All I felt was utter bewilderment. I had been on the verge of cutting off her sponsorship, but then, quite by chance, I saw Clara and her grandmother. It was a biting cold day, and they were huddled over a small street stall, trying to earn a meager living. They were both shivering in the frigid wind, their faces pale with cold, yet they were striving to make ends meet, just trying to survive. I watched as her grandmother, with a gentle smile, pulled a roasted sweet potato from her worn coat and offered it to Clara. In that fleeting moment, a vivid image of my own grandmother flashed before my eyes. When I was a child, my parents were always busy, and every holiday I'd spend at my grandmother's old house in the countryside. She would often bake sweet potatoes for me, their warmth chasing away the winter chill. In a hazy, dreamlike instant, her smile merged with my grandmother's. A sharp pang of loss pierced my heart. I don't have my grandmother anymore, I thought, the realization hitting me with fresh force. And just like that, my resolve crumbled. My heart softened again. Fine, I conceded to myself. As long as she leaves me alone from now on, I'll just turn a blind eye to her antics. One holiday, I left campus later than most, the grounds almost deserted. Near the school gates, I spotted Clara's grandmother sitting on the curb, seemingly waiting for someone. As she saw me approach, her face lit up with surprise, then quickly transformed into radiant joy. She hurried towards me, her eyes sparkling with an almost overwhelming gratitude. "You must be Ethan Ainsworth, aren't you?" she exclaimed, her voice filled with genuine warmth. "I'm Clara Song's grandmother. You are our benefactor, our savior." Her aging face was etched with sincere thankfulness. "Please, you really don't need to be so formal," I began, feeling a little awkward under her earnest gaze. Just then, Clara emerged from the school gates. But when she saw her grandmother, a wave of embarrassment washed over her face. "Grandma, what are you doing here?" she asked, her tone laced with awkwardness. "I came to take you home, dearie," her grandmother replied, oblivious to Clara's discomfort. "Look, I bought you all your favorite snacks." She proudly held up a bright red plastic bag, presenting it to Clara like a treasured gift. In her mind, her granddaughter was still the same little girl who would light up at the sight of treats. But the young woman before her was no longer that innocent child. Disappointment was inevitable. And indeed, Clara's reaction was far from joyful. She recoiled, her face contorted with distaste. "Grandma, why are you carrying all this stuff? I'm all grown up now. I don't eat these childish things anymore," she hissed, her voice sharp with impatience. "And a red plastic bag? Seriously? How embarrassing." She seemed mortified, not daring to even glance in my direction, urging her grandmother to leave as quickly as possible. She still didn't realize that I had already met her grandmother. "Wait a moment, let me say a few more words to our benefactor," her grandmother insisted, trying to bridge the widening gap between them. "No, just stop it, Grandma. Let's just go. Aren't you ashamed?" Clara snapped, pulling at her grandmother's arm. Watching their figures disappear into the distance, a chilling realization dawned on me. I had been wrong, terribly wrong. I shouldn't have let my sentimental feelings for her grandmother cloud my judgment. As soon as I got home, I spoke to my family and requested to discontinue Clara's sponsorship. I hadn't anticipated her reaction. She actually called me, her voice laced with accusatory indignation. "Ethan Ainsworth, why have you stopped sponsoring me? Is it because you saw my grandmother that day? Did you look down on her?" I think the one who looked down on her was you, I retorted, my patience finally snapping. I didn't want to listen to any more of her nonsense. I simply blocked her number and deleted her contact information. Later, while out singing karaoke with friends, I unexpectedly saw Clara again. She was working as a hostess in the karaoke bar, selling liquor. I was genuinely shocked. Wasn't she with Daniel? Would Daniel really let her work in a place like this? Even in the short time I saw her, several men had already approached her, trying to flirt and chat her up. When she noticed me, a flash of shame flickered across her face. I didn't say anything and headed straight into our private room. Later, when she came to our room to take drink orders, my friends, seeing her pretty face, immediately started teasing her. Hey beautiful, why are you working as a hostess? Be my girlfriend. I'll give you $20,000 a month. She glared at my friend, ready to snap back, but then seemed to reconsider, hesitating. I'm not that kind of girl, she mumbled defensively. Sensing the awkwardness of the situation and realizing she was, after all, a student from my university, I intervened, pulling my friend aside. I told him she was a junior classmate. Then, turning to Clara, I said, you can be in charge of our room's drinks tonight. I took the drink menu from her hand. Ethan Ainsworth, haven't you humiliated me enough? She hissed, her eyes beginning to water, but her gaze still stubbornly defiant. First, you cut off my sponsorship, and now you want to see me grovel at your feet? Let me tell you something. It's never going to happen. I would never go back to you. Daniel is wonderful, and I love him very much. Clara Song, are you out of your mind? I exploded, finally losing my temper. I'm asking you to stay so you can earn some tips, make things a little easier for your grandmother. To help her out, you idiot. I was trying to do you a favor, and you repay kindness with ingratitude. Get out. Damn it. Seeing my outburst, my friends quickly ushered her out of the room. Realizing she had misunderstood my intentions, she didn't apologize, but left with a complex, unreadable expression on her face. Later, my friend suggested I hire someone to beat her up. Do you think I haven't thought about it? I said, leaning my head back, trying to suppress the rising anger and frustration. I dream about it. But this is a society ruled by law, I continued, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. I can't just go around hiring thugs. After she left, the festive mood was completely gone. I told my friends I was heading home and left the karaoke bar. After that night, Clara and Daniel, those two clowns, seemed to have finally gotten the message. They stopped their ridiculous charade and disappeared from my sight. I finally had some peace and quiet. Then, I received news that Sophia was returning to the country. I could hardly believe it. For a few seconds, I was completely stunned before I heard her teasing voice from the other end of the phone. Why, are you so thrilled that I'm coming back? Sophia, Call me older sister, she corrected me playfully, interrupting my stammered greeting. Sophia, welcome home, I finally managed to say, my voice trembling slightly, and I've missed you terribly. Before she could respond, I hung up, my face burning with a mixture of joy and embarrassment. She was the one I had always loved. My neighbor's older sister, 3 years my senior. Even after she went abroad for studies, my feelings for her hadn't changed. On the drive to the airport to pick her up, I kept checking my reflection in the rearview mirror, meticulously adjusting my hair and clothes. I was terrified of having even the slightest imperfection. I even rehearsed conversations in my head, afraid of embarrassing myself when we finally met. But the moment I saw her, standing in the arrivals hall, all my carefully prepared words vanished. I froze, speechless, my cheeks flushing with heat. She playfully pinched my cheek, her eyes twinkling with amusement, still as awkward as ever, even after all these years. Sophia. I finally managed to whisper her name. Call me older sister, she repeated, her smile widening. Without another word, I pulled her into a tight embrace, wanting to hold her so close that we'd become one. Sophia, I've missed you so much. With Sophia back in the country, I began planning my confession of love. I meticulously oversaw every detail, From choosing the perfect location to arranging decorations and props, I was completely absorbed in the preparations. It was only when Clara suddenly reappeared that I remembered her existence. "Ethan Ainsworth, I truly misjudged you," she accused, her voice dripping with venom. "You are a despicable, petty man. You actually changed the competition rules for your precious white moonlight." "What are you talking about?" I asked, staring at her in utter confusion. "Don't you dare pretend you don't know," she spat. "Sophia's first prize in the art competition. You rigged it, didn't you? I should have been first. You used your underhanded tactics to steal my rightful place and give it to her." "Clara Song, you need to get your head examined," I retorted, rolling my eyes. "I didn't even know you were participating in any competition, let alone rigging anything." I was aware that Sophia had recently won first prize in a painting competition, but that was hardly surprising. Sophia was a genuinely gifted artist. "Don't play innocent with me." Clara's face contorted with rage, refusing to believe my explanation. "I told you before, we are impossible. Why are you still clinging to me?" "Excuse me, but who is clinging to whom here?" I muttered under my breath, feeling utterly exasperated. Being entangled with this crazy woman was truly my misfortune. "Wasn't it enough that my family sponsored you?" I said, my voice laced with sarcasm. "I only did it because I felt sorry for your grandmother, not wanting her to struggle so much. Why don't you just return all the money we gave you and disappear from my life?" She sneered. "Dream on. Is it because your white moonlight is back? Are you afraid I'll tell her about us, so you're desperate to break things off with me?" "What us are you even talking about?" I exclaimed, completely baffled by her delusional pronouncements. Her tone was utterly bizarre, as if I had actually betrayed and abandoned her. "You know very well what I mean," she retorted, turning to leave. "Wait, explain yourself clearly." I grabbed her arm, stopping her from walking away. Just then, Sophia suddenly appeared, witnessing the scene. She paused, a flicker of surprise in her eyes. Instinctively, I released Clara's arm. Damn it, I thought, a ridiculous feeling of being caught cheating washing over me. Clara glanced at her arm, now freed, a cold, mocking smile playing on her lips, and then turned and walked away. "Was that your girlfriend?" Sophia asked, her expression unreadable. "Of course not," I protested vehemently, quickly explaining the entire story. The sponsorship, Clara's relentless pursuit, and the whole series of ridiculous and unfortunate events. I was desperate to clear up any possible misunderstanding. After listening to my hurried explanation, Sophia was silent for a few moments, then finally said, "This girl, is she mentally unstable?" An article titled, "Rich Second-Generation Heir Sponsors My Education, Uses Me as a Substitute for His White Moonlight Abroad," went viral online. The article vividly described how a wealthy heir fell deeply in love with the female protagonist at first sight. Later, when the heroine started dating his best friend, the enraged heir cut off her sponsorship. When his white moonlight returned, the heir, wielding his family's influence, shamelessly stole the first prize in a competition that rightfully belonged to the heroine and gave it to his white moonlight, all in a desperate attempt to force her to return to him. OMG, is this a novel? A classic chasing wife in a crematorium plot. Run, girl, run. This kind of man is toxic. Never forgive him, ever. People on campus naturally began to connect the story to real people. My photos, along with photos of others involved, were soon circulating wildly online. Every time I stepped out, I was met with whispers and pointing fingers. Furious, I immediately reported it to the police. The police investigation confirmed that Clara Song was indeed the author of the article, but she stubbornly insisted it was just fiction, a novel she was writing. She denied posting the photos online. In the end, the police could only order her to delete the article and issue a public apology. That was it. Emerging from the police station, Clara showed no sign of remorse. Instead, she looked at me with a defiant smirk. "Ethan Ainsworth, you can't control everything forever. I used to be lenient with you, time and time again, because of your grandmother. I said, my voice cold and hard. Clara song, from this day forward, I will no longer be soft on you. As soon as I got home, the first thing I did was to post both Clara's painting, the one she claimed was robbed of first prize, and Sophia's winning artwork online. I included the competition results, tagging the account that had posted Clara's defamatory article. The caption read, "This is your first place artwork that was stolen. You placed 23rd. So, what happened to the 22 people ahead of you? Did you just eat them all up?" Netizens quickly saw the stark difference in quality between the two paintings. Demands for Clara to respond flooded the comment sections. But the cunning Clara cleverly avoided directly addressing the artwork itself. Instead, she played the victim card, tearfully lamenting her humble background and insisting she only wanted to express her gratitude. In response, I released our WeChat chat history. The screenshots clearly showed me explicitly telling her that I didn't need her repayment. I also explained that my family had sponsored her out of sympathy for her grandmother, who reminded me of my own, and out of concern for the elderly woman's difficult life. I had urged Clara to focus on her studies and contribute positively to society after graduation as her way of repaying our kindness. But she had persisted in her obsessive gratitude, resorting to manipulative tactics, relentless harassment, and finally, online defamation. Her true motives were now crystal clear. Instantly, public opinion turned against her. I went from being portrayed as a Wanku Fuardai, Wankuzerdi rich and good-for-nothing son of a wealthy family, to a kind and righteous philanthropist. And Clara, the self-proclaimed, self-reliant white flower, was now exposed as a scheming, opportunistic woman desperately trying to climb the social ladder. Like a crumbling wall, everyone turned against her. Students from our university began leaving comments. Ethan Ainsworth had already rejected her advances multiple times. He has someone he loves, but she still wouldn't leave him alone. Typical of poor people, always looking for shortcuts and underhanded ways to get ahead. Seeing some of the harsher and more prejudiced comments, I quickly posted another message, trying to steer the narrative away from generalizations. I didn't want Clara's actions to taint the reputation of other students from disadvantaged backgrounds. The students my family sponsored were generally hardworking and ambitious. They might be poor, but they had integrity. This series of online rebuttals cornered Clara. She left a final, dramatic message: "If I can't have him, I'll destroy him," before deleting her account and disappearing from the internet. Even on campus, she was now ostracized and whispered about. The university issued her a major demerit, but she seemed utterly unfazed, continuing to act as if nothing had happened. Her thick skin was truly unmatched. I thought she might finally have learned her lesson and would behave herself, but I was wrong. She was just plotting something even more sinister. On the day I planned to propose, I wore a custom-tailored suit from abroad, and the venue was decorated exactly as Sophia had always dreamed. All our closest friends were there, surrounding us with love and support. As I got down on one knee and uttered the words, "Will you marry me?" the entire room erupted in cheers and applause. But before Sophia could answer, a shrill, unwelcome voice cut through the joyous atmosphere. "Ethan Ainsworth, your actions are disgusting." Clara, arm in arm with Daniel, had crashed my proposal. She surveyed the beautifully decorated, luxurious venue, jealousy blazing in her eyes. But she forced herself to appear nonchalant. "I know you can't forget about me," she declared, her voice dripping with false confidence. "But let me tell you, I've already moved on. I have someone I love now. No matter what you do, you can't provoke me." Daniel chimed in, playing his supporting role. "This setup is nothing special anyway. When I propose to Clara in the future, it will be 1,000,000 times more extravagant than this. I swear, I'm usually a patient and even-tempered person, but at that moment, I was so enraged I wanted to punch both of their smug faces. "Who let you two in here?" I roared, my voice echoing through the suddenly silent room. The security guards at the entrance rushed over, stammering apologies. "We're so sorry, Mr. Ainsworth. The gentleman said he was your roommate. So you know you messed up. Get them out of here now." I barked, my patience completely exhausted. The security guards awkwardly dragged the pair away, their protests fading as they were hustled out of the venue. But they had already succeeded in ruining my carefully planned proposal. The magical atmosphere was shattered. I was seething, ready to chase after them and give them a piece of my mind. Sophia, sensing my anger, gently stroked my hair, a comforting gesture. "Silly boy," she murmured, her voice soft and soothing. "I accept your proposal. I came back to this country for you." In that instant, it felt like fireworks were exploding in my head. The anger vanished, replaced by an overwhelming wave of joy and relief. All I could focus on were her words. She accepted. She came back for me. She glanced at the now empty doorway where Clara and Daniel had been dragged out, a thoughtful expression on her face. Those two really need to be dealt with properly. I'm completely out of ideas when it comes to them, I confessed, shaking my head in frustration. Reasoning with Clara was futile. Cutting off her sponsorship hadn't worked. Even exposing her online had only seemed to fuel her delusion that I was obsessed with her. How could anyone be so utterly bizarre? "Don't worry," Sophia said, a confident smile playing on her lips. "Leave it to me. I promise you, she won't bother you again. She probably thinks of you as some kind of evil white moonlight now," I said, mimicking Clara's dramatic tone and rolling my eyes. "You think you can provoke me by being with your white moonlight? I'm over you. I have a boyfriend now. Please leave me alone." Sophia chuckled at my impersonation. "Trust me," she said, her eyes sparkling with a hint of mischief. "She will never trouble you again." I had no idea what Sophia had planned, but true to her word, Clara completely vanished from my life. Daniel, however, remained a fixture on campus, but he was perpetually gloomy, constantly sighing and muttering to himself while staring at his phone. Then, one day, I accidentally saw Clara again. She was walking arm in arm with a foreign man, giggling and flirting. That's when I understood. She spotted me too, and deliberately steered her foreign companion towards me. Strutting like a victorious peacock, her head held high, she approached, her voice dripping with arrogance and triumph. "Ethan Ainsworth," she announced, "as you wished, I will never bother you again. Make is richer and more handsome than you." "Oh, well, that's just fantastic news," I replied, a genuine smile spreading across my face. "I feel like I've just won the lottery." Her triumphant expression faltered, replaced by a mixture of annoyance and resentment. "Huh, I know you're just saying that to save face. Deep down, you must be regretting how you treated me." She paused for dramatic effect. "Well, let me tell you, it's too late now." I just stared at her, my face blank. I wish I could live life with her level of delusion and shamelessness, I thought wryly. Enraged, Clara grabbed her foreign boyfriend's arm and stormed off, leaving me shaking my head in bewildered amusement. News of Clara's foreign boyfriend spread like wildfire across campus, fueled by gossip and speculation. Rumors circulated that she was dropping out of school to move abroad with him. Soon, the rumors were confirmed. Clara actually sought me out to personally deliver the news, informing me of her impending departure and warning me not to use any dirty tricks to stop her. I immediately relayed the news to Sophia. "Wonderful! She's finally leaving," I exclaimed, relief flooding through me. "I'm finally free from this nightmare." I couldn't stop smiling. The thought of finally being rid of that crazy woman was pure bliss. Sophia watched me, a teasing smile playing on her lips. "Are you really that happy?" Seeing her calm, almost knowing expression, it dawned on me. "Sophia, did you know she was going abroad?" I asked, my curiosity piqued. She nodded, a knowing glint in her eyes. "Make is a classmate of mine from abroad," she explained. "What?" I exclaimed, completely taken aback. "He used to pursue me back in college, but I turned him down," she continued casually. "But he was still looking for a Chinese girlfriend. And then, I remembered Clara. He used to pursue you?" The thought suddenly made me feel less happy. Sophia noticed my change in mood and leaned in to kiss me lightly on the lips. "Don't worry, silly," she whispered, her eyes sparkling with affection. I never liked him. You little jealous pot. I wrapped my arms around her waist, deepening the kiss, my momentary jealousy melting away in her embrace. Clara's departure arrangements went smoothly. Fearing she might change her mind at the last minute, I even discreetly hired someone to keep an eye on her. But she didn't take her grandmother with her. This bothered me. Fortunately, without Clara as a burden, the local community helped the elderly woman apply for government assistance, ensuring she had enough to live on. Finally free from Clara's shadow, Sophia and I began our sweet, blissful relationship. We got married soon after graduation. But on our wedding day, the nightmare that had haunted me for so long returned. Clara's song was back. She stormed onto the stage, rushing towards me and throwing her arms around me in a tight, desperate embrace. "Ethan, I regret it," she sobbed, her voice echoing through the stunned silence. "I shouldn't have left with him. It's always been you. You're the only one I've ever loved." Her words hung in the air, creating a deafening silence. Everyone in the wedding hall was frozen, staring at the chaotic scene unfolding on stage. Reacting instantly, I shoved her away, pushing her back with all my strength. "You crazy woman. Who let her in here?" "Security. Security. Get this lunatic out of here." Clara stumbled backward, but quickly regained her balance. Undeterred, she looked at me, tears streaming down her face, her eyes filled with a disturbing intensity. "Ethan, are you only marrying her to get back at me? To make me jealous?" "I really do know I was wrong," she pleaded, her voice rising hysterically. "I shouldn't have left with him back then. I realize now, the only man I've ever loved is you. Let's get married, Ethan." Several security guards rushed forward, grabbing her arms and beginning to drag her away. But she struggled fiercely, resisting with surprising strength, her voice rising in a desperate, broken wail. "Ethan, Ethan, don't be so cruel to me." I stood there, speechless, utterly dumbfounded. The whole spectacle made me look like the villain, the heartless Janan, scumbag/jerk. I could feel the bewildered and accusatory gazes of the wedding guests directed at me. Just then, Sophia intervened, calling out to the security guards. "Wait," she commanded, but gestured for them to keep hold of Clara. "Don't let her go yet. Call the police." "Ruining my wedding," Sophia said, her voice calm but steely, her eyes fixed on Clara. "And you think you can just walk away?" Clara's face paled. "What do you want?" she cried, her voice laced with panic. "It's all this evil woman's fault. She stole Ethan from me." I couldn't help but explode. "Are you completely delusional?" I shouted, my voice raw with anger and disbelief. "My family once sponsored you. That's it. When was there ever any US? When have I ever had any romantic feelings for you?" Sophia gently touched my arm, a silent gesture of reassurance. Then, turning to Clara, she calmly asked, "Why are you back? Didn't you leave with Make?" That Janan, scumbag/jerk, just wanted to play with me." Clara spat, her face contorted with bitterness and rage. "He never had any intention of marrying me." Her voice was laced with a mixture of resentment and a disturbing, manic intensity. It was clear her time abroad had not been kind to her. "Ethan is the best," she continued, her gaze fixated on me, her voice softening into a disturbing, almost pleading tone. "Let's get married, Ethan." "You are truly insane," I muttered, shaking my head in disgust and disbelief. Just then, the police arrived and took Clara into custody. Later, a search revealed that she had a knife hidden on her person. She claimed it was just for cutting fruit. The police were, understandably, unconvinced. I shuddered, realizing how close we had come to a truly horrifying tragedy. Thank goodness the security guards had intervened when they did. In the end, because she hadn't actually harmed anyone, she was only detained for 3 days before being released. As she was led away, she turned to me, her eyes burning with a chilling intensity. "Ethan Ainsworth," she vowed, her voice echoing with a terrifying conviction, "I will haunt you for the rest of your life." "I'm afraid that won't be possible," I replied, gesturing towards the arriving ambulance from the psychiatric hospital. "It looks like you'll be staying at a different kind of institution from now on." Psychiatric evaluations confirmed Clara's severe mental state, schizophrenia and delusional disorder. It was determined that she had harbored violent intentions on our wedding day. She was committed to a mental institution. According to the doctors there, she constantly ranted about how the ending wasn't supposed to be like this. This wasn't the ending she had envisioned. She insisted she was the heroine of her own story and demanded to see me. "See you? Dream on. You crazy woman." It turned out that Daniel was the one who had let her into the wedding. Over the years, his family's business had declined drastically. His actions that day, in enabling Clara's wedding crash, had finally crossed a line. He'd offended both my family and Sophia's powerful family, and the repercussions were swift and devastating. Within a few years, his family's business completely collapsed. Daniel himself tragically died in a car accident. Clara's grandmother also passed away. I heard that before she died, she had expressed a wish to see Clara one last time, to say goodbye. But Clara had refused. The old woman passed away with that final, heartbreaking regret. Some people, you long to see again, but never will. "Ethan," Sophia said softly, her voice pulling me back to the present. She was 6 months pregnant now, and sensing my somber mood, she wrapped her arms around me, holding me close. "Let's go visit Grandma," she suggested gently. "She must be missing us." I held her tightly, my voice muffled against her shoulder. "Okay," I whispered. Grandmother was buried beside the old house we used to live in. "Fallen leaves return to their roots," she had always said. Looking at her smiling face on the tombstone, a wave of bittersweet emotion washed over me. "Grandma, I'm happy now. I have a wife I love and a child on the way. If only you could see it all." A gentle breeze rustled through the leaves, feeling like my grandmother's hand, softly wiping away my tears. "Life goes on. May there be fewer regrets along the way."